Lumin City is a furry YouTuber who, at the time of writing, has amassed a subscriber count of around 1,500. They uphold themselves as a furry diving deep into how the fandom works, from how they came to exist, became popular, and the current news about furry art, fursuits, furry conventions, and LGBTQ involvement. However, recent information coming to light would paint a different picture. A picture of someone unable to respect personal boundaries both on and offline to a point it's downright worrying. From stalking notable members of the fandom at conventions, to acting on grudges with those he holds contempt against. While he's a relatively small creator, his actions have garnered him a sizable amount of infamy among members in the fandom, accruing a number of accusations that leave a lot to be desired. This is a video where I'll be giving you an extended overview of Lumin City, the content he creates, how he conducts himself, and a number of his more infamous actions, in an effort to show you how you shouldn't interact with the furry fandom. Or any fandom, in all honesty. And I think the best thing to do would be to introduce you to what Lumin was most known for, the content he uploads onto YouTube. For those who aren't familiar with Lumin, you might be wondering what type of content is made on his channel. Looking at the description, Lumin City can be summarized as a furry news channel, although I would be more inclined to describe him as a commentary channel. This is because, similar to my content, he creates videos commenting on drama or other topics that arise in the furry community. But unlike myself, he primarily uses a short-form approach to his content, aiming to give you a synopsis of an event as quickly as possible, to varying results. What I mean is that sometimes he can run through a topic so quickly that his words can start to mix together audibly, making him more difficult to understand.
How did a far-right animal abuser furry best known for the fursuit's blonde bowl cut attend Furthermore 2023? And did it succeed beside that? Furthermore is a furry convention in the Baltimore metro area that began in 2013, relocating to the Washington metro area in 2015. In 2019, it peaked at 1,487 attendees, and in 2020, just before the COVID-19 pandemic, saw 1,466.
Along with that, sometimes his videos can feel less like the furry news, and more like Lumin taking jabs at creators or people he just doesn't agree with. An example of this would be the video he created in June 2022 titled Beta Ada Delota is Killing Furry YouTube. Despite what the title would lead you to believe, this video doesn't really touch on anything Beta has done that has resulted in the furry YouTube creator space being made worse. The main criticisms presented in this video are Beta's switch from edited videos to stream highlights, Beta's usage of suggestive thumbnails, and how Beta blocking Lumin on Twitter shows that Beta thinks little of smaller creators.
I noticed that Beta uploaded a video that had suspiciously similar thumbnail to a previous video. When I checked, this was true. I made a tweet highlighting this with no ill will to the creator. He responded, which resulted in engagement from the tweet. I didn't notice at the time, but shortly after his tweet, he decided to block me on his account. I don't know if I insulted the creator because I tried reaching out to them, only to never get a response. You might be seeing a pattern here. Beta doesn't care about smaller creators, actively pushing them away. I believe he knows his YouTube career is slowing down due to lack of effort being put into his videos. In order to combat this, instead of making better content, he's getting fans to harass smaller creators on his behalf. Given his recent actions, you might think there's a secret chat the creator runs which facilitates his harassment. However, it doesn't matter if it exists, because he's created a culture among fans that creators who try to critique the channel are met with harassment.
There was no pattern built up to this accusation. He mentioned Beta in a tweet about how he reused a thumbnail he used months ago, got blocked for it, and took that as Beta sending hordes of his fans to harass smaller creators criticizing him. This harassment is alleged with no form of proof, no DMs sent to Lumin, no testimony from another creator, not even something as small as the replies to the tweet, which are about as tame as one could get on Twitter. But even with how Lumin goes into detail with each point, all but one of these main points really feed into the thesis statement of Beta killing furry YouTube. The only statement I believe had credence was one that I also criticized Beta for previously, his usage of suggestive, sometimes fetishy thumbnails. But even then, that was a popular criticism of him, one that he would listen to as he moved away from using them, even before this video was posted. So, because his other points were either heavily opinionated or didn't have the proof needed to substantiate them, the video came off as a jab towards Beta, regardless of the opening disclaimer. As a result, the video wouldn't perform all too well, even garnering criticism from myself as well as a few contemporaries of mine. We would express our issues with this coverage to mixed results, from a respectful disagreement to labeling a user as an immature beta fanboy for finding the video to be without merit, even ridiculing them in a community post. This thread did end with Lumin saying he would be taking time to reflect on this fallout, so one would assume he looked things over and realized where he went wrong here, right? He would realize videos with faulty information made through the haze of a petty grudge wouldn't perform all too well, right? In July of 2023, I found myself in a bit of an altercation on Twitter. I've mentioned it in a previous video of mine, but for those who aren't aware, during Anthrocon 2023, Hearth Fox was in the fandom spotlight due to the fox puppet they made that they would dance around with at the venue. During the convention, I made a tweet joking about the puppet getting cancelled, unaware that 3 days later, Hearth would be facing pushback for their take on Feral Not Safe for Work. This later resulted in my tweet being labeled as a call to action against Hearth, my past usage of Kiwi Farms being used to support the claim regardless of it having no correlation with the tweet I made. Regardless, this left me as less than favorable in the eyes of quite a few members in the fandom. And with that being the case, Lumin took it upon himself to capitalize on that through the creation of 2 YouTube shorts, one accusing me of being behind a hate campaign aimed towards Hearth, alluding to it being because Hearth was a furry minority who was popular at the time.
Unfortunately, Hearth saw character assassinations, accusing them of being a for not criticizing someone liking not safe for work animal art. They were harassed, sent slurs, death threats, and attacked by LagoVirt, a furry content creator with 38,000 subscribers. Furries, especially minorities, have always faced discrimination and have been subject to character assassination when we get positive attention on social media, especially Twitter.
And another that accused me of plagiarizing my videos with no elaboration on how.
They recently got into controversy over a poorly worded tweet about canceling Hearth Fox Anthrocon 2023 puppet. This was an accusation of punching down when Hearth was accused of being a LagoVirt sympathized with Hearth's death threat and the role the tweet played in it, but disagreed with being the sole reason for their harassment. The defender used a Kiwi farm to research, a bigoted hate speech form due to archiving criminal behavior. However, they plagiarized from the website. Don't believe their Dragon Year video, and likely many others talking about other aberrant furries.
He based this claim solely due to my previous usage of Kiwi Farms, a website that I've since disavowed after being made aware that information I pulled from the site led to me wrongfully labeling a member of the fandom as a zoophile. You can read my response addressing this through the link in the description, as it isn't that important when it comes to Lumin, as he didn't criticize me for my usage of the site like most others did at the time, just claiming that my video plagiarized a form on the site while alluding that there might be more instances where I've done this. Allegations that can't exactly be argued in the span of 30 seconds. You could label me bringing this up as coping from myself, and honestly I couldn't really blame you. I just wanted to use a personal instance of mine to capture a recurring theme among Lumin's channel. A theme of using his platform against furries or creators who have scorned him in the past. A mindset that not only shows in his content, but how he carries himself through the fandom, both on and off the web. According to Lumin, he had just recently turned 18 at some point in 2023. I mentioned this due to the reputation Lumin had garnered prior to becoming of age. There's a number of testimonies levied towards Lumin, accusing him of knowingly trying to sneak into 18+ areas while being underage. This behavior can be seen through his usage of the furry social app Bark, an application he would be banned from in July of 2022. You see, the youngest age a Bark user can be is 16. However, the app is set up in a way that if a registering user sets their age below 18, then their age will be publicly displayed on their account. This also prohibits minors from seeing the After Dark accounts of other adult users, but we're focusing on the public age part for now. As while adult users can hide their age, 16 and 17-year-olds cannot, letting everyone around them know that they're underage. This is done so that other users on the site are aware that they're a minor, and will behave accordingly, for better or for worse. Lumin, however, saw this as a forfeit of privacy, stating, "So I guess minors don't deserve privacy, but at least we can block adults." Now, I get the issue some would have with this method. Bark is an app that shows you whatever furries are in your area. Having every teenager's age publicly listed could make it that much easier for a predator to find their next local victim. But sadly, that's just a byproduct of the internet as a whole. At a certain point, you yourself have to learn and practice internet safety etiquette. The app developers can only do so much when it comes to making a healthy environment for their user base. However, things only seem to worsen for Lumin, as he would get his account banned for constantly changing his age between 17 and 18, although he would seem to throw ACAB into the mix as well for some reason. I'm pretty positive that slogan had nothing to do with the reason he was banned, but this incident shows that Lumin values anonymity and a right to privacy, which is respectable. The problem from that comes from him using that anonymity to lie about his age, something that he was accused of doing at furry convention Furrydelphia in 2022. When it comes to Furrydelphia, they have a policy that all staff working for the convention must be 18 years or older, for liability and insurance reasons, of course. This is something Lumin himself is well aware of, as he was told this directly by the convention staff on Twitter. However, it's claimed that Lumin would attempt to host an inflatable pool toy meet and greet panel at the convention regardless. This claim comes in the form of a Twitter post alleging that Lumin attempted to register for the slot before being rejected. Despite the refusal, Lumin would get a friend of his to apply for the slot instead, and upon approval, he would transfer the panel over to Lumin. Looking deeper into this claim, I couldn't really find anything concerning an inflatable meet and greet at the con, at least not in 2022. However, there is an archived tweet from Lumin where he mentions the panel. The tweet reading, "Here is an inflatable pool toy collection for the upcoming Furrydelphia pool toy panel this squeaky Saturday." Apart from this tweet, there seems to be no mention whatsoever of an inflatable panel taking place at Furrydelphia 2022. It can be assumed that the staff of the convention caught wind of this and silently axed the panel, but as there seems to be no public proof of this, this portion just remains as an assumption. Regardless, I wanted this to present the reputation he's accumulated through his FurCon attendance, as these testimonies lend credence to the claim that would result in a spotlight being placed on Lumin City down the line. On October 27th, 2022, the 7th in-person iteration of Furpocalypse was being held. Lumin's attendance can be confirmed through a simple viewing of the con's scheduled panels. An inflatable pool toy meetup scheduled for the second evening of the con, with Lumin as one of the two speakers. Something that confuses me a bit given Lumin would later admit to being 17 at this time, but putting the panel aside, there would be an incident at this convention that followed Lumin into the upcoming year. But to talk about that, we'll have to introduce the two people Lumin's offense was against. Blue Wolf is a widely known person in the fandom, being a popular trans furry known for their meme posting, as well as the harassment she'd faced from Twitter users like Valid Els, a gimmick account previously dedicated to mocking openly trans people. As Blue was attending Furpocalypse in 2022, they would go with a furry by the name of Trip back to his hotel room to spend some time together, Trip being a furry I've mentioned previously during my overview of Capital City FurCon. According to Trip's allegation, as he and Blue were snugging in bed, there would be a knock at the door. Trip's roommate would answer it, only to find Lumin City. He then allegedly pushed past the roommate, took a photo of Trip and Blue with his phone, and then immediately left. Trip was furious over what had just happened, sending this message over to Lumin on Telegram. He would make it clear that he wasn't planning to press charges against Lumin for the encounter, but he would make it even clearer that regardless of if Lumin took a photo or not, no one consented to having him barge in like that. He would end the message by telling Lumin to stay away from him or he would get con security involved, blocking Lumin on Telegram immediately after sending this. Lumin would also be messaged by Blue, in which he would respond stating that he noticed that what he did wasn't the best idea. Blue then explains that the two were just a bit freaked out by how Lumin found their hotel room to get a picture with Blue, as that wasn't even her hotel room they were in. Lumin answered by saying that he and Trip shared neighboring rooms, and he just happened to see Blue Wolf go in with Trip when he looked outside. Now, neither Trip nor Blue would go public about this situation at the moment, as it wasn't until October of 2023 that Trip would come out with a Beware post about Lumin, giving a summarized version of the events we just went over. The response to this Beware post was a pretty sizable one. There were multiple testimonies in the replies that spoke of Lumin's less than savory behavior, from lying about his age to be in not safe for work online chats, taking photos of fursuiters out of suit without their permission, stalking the owners of the fur groups he got banned from, even sticking his hand in a random person's drink to get the fruit out of it at a Dave & Buster's. There are quite a worrying number of users here detailing their experiences with Lumin in both online chat rooms as well as the public. So how did Lumin himself take this? Well, just moments after getting called out by Trip, Lumin could be seen in a venting channel of someone's Discord server, talking about how he was getting cancelled on Twitter. Publicly, Lumin would use his channel's community tab to tell his audience that he'd soon be posting a response concerning the Beware post, and not too soon after, he would deliver just that. As far as responses to controversy go, this is one of them, I suppose. It's structured very similarly to one of his videos, opening with an explanation before slowly but surely diverging from the topic presented. It opens with an apology to Trip for the distress his actions caused before giving you a taste of what to expect here, saying that these callouts and public shaming are more than furry drama. I'm concerned it's being driven by emotions rather than facts, with questions being silenced and my privacy being invaded. I'm sharing the full story of my side so people can understand what happened. What any of that meant, I genuinely couldn't tell you. But going on to explain his side, he would start by telling the reader why we're here, because of Trip's tweet accusing Lumin of stalking and taking photos of him and a friend without their consent. He states how he was a minor at furpoc 2022 who wanted to take a photo with Blue Wolf. Lumin's recollection of events is somewhat similar to Trip's. However, they differ in a pretty substantial detail. Where Trip claims his roommate got the door when Lumin arrived, Lumin says that it was Trip who answered the door. Despite the fact this doesn't make too much sense, as Trip couldn't be both cuddling someone in bed and entering the door simultaneously, this discrepancy never really goes elaborated on, as Lumin then goes on to how he did approach the two with his phone pointed at them, but that he didn't get the image with Blue Wolf that he was hoping for. He would say how he understood the fear and distress Chip felt from Lumin's visit, because being neurodivergent for his whole life, he's been aware that his actions could be misinterpreted as malicious. I'm not sure if being a literal neurodivergent minor is the problem here, but let's just keep going. In the next paragraph, Lumin begins to talk about the aftermath of the incident, mainly Trip messaging him on Telegram. He gets hung up on the statement of, "Be happy I'm not pressing charges," saying that it was unclear why Trip didn't follow through if he believed he had a case, even mentioning how there are limited circumstances where minors can be sued. Personally, I'm just not sure what Lumin gets out of mentioning this. A part of me thinks it's Lumin trying to downplay it and create cause for speculation, as he then brings attention to Trip saying he didn't know if Lumin actually took a photo with them or not, using this to say Trip might have misremembered what happened, even though the Telegram message he's quoting was sent the day it happened. But right after that, he goes onto a tangent about his experience being neurodivergent, which has some cohesion given it ties into his reason for why he did what he did. But then we go on a completely unrelated tangent about public shaming. Its inclusion doesn't make a lick of sense until about a paragraph in, where he addresses Trip leaking the Discord screenshot that showed Lumin venting about getting cancelled on Twitter. He alleges that the server owner, who he specifies has their own mental health struggles, condemned the leaking of messages from their server, knew Lumin's actions were inappropriate, and decided to message Trip about the leak. Now, Lumin's response only notes that Trip stopped reading the server owner's message when they made the situation all about themselves and blocked them. However, I can say that this interpretation is only correct on a surface level. You see, Lumin actually linked the mega folder to this post. It contained dumps of his Telegram DMs with both Blue and Trip, as well as the Twitter DMs between Trip and the Discord server owner. And reading through the absolute essay this server owner sent, I can only describe it as the server owner condemning the leaks of the screenshot, advocating for Lumin's right to vent in a Discord server, saying Tripp's assessment of the vent was a little overboard, and attempting to downplay what Lumin did to Tripp and Blue while repeating multiple times that they weren't condoning Lumin's actions, each time followed by a "but" without fail. My apologies, but I can't exactly fault Tripp for the response he gave here. Going back to the response though, we now have Lumin talking about how public shaming and misinformation have skyrocketed since Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter in 2022, especially relating to minorities. Something that, while true, doesn't apply to this situation here, but at least he ends this response with saying that he'll listen to the critiques of his actions, regardless of some of the sentences just feeling off and unrelated. Although, under this conclusion, a few links he added caught my eye. I mean, sure, he linked to the mega folder of evidence I mentioned earlier, but why include videos about Pro-Jared and Quite's responses to their own respective allegations? These add nothing whatsoever to his own response. So, as you can probably tell, this response did anything but actually address the allegation being made towards him. Don't get me wrong, Lumin did apologize and give his side to the situation, but when you bury that under a rant about public shaming being bad and using the act of leaking a Discord message to undermine your accuser's credibility, any authenticity you might have had will likely fade to the wayside. It's about the same as using an apology video to whine about the spooky cancel culture crowd coming to get you. Regardless, this response was met with virtually no reception. Only 9 likes and a single comment saying, "I would have called the police, dog." Public discussion concerning the callout would die down sometime afterwards, at least until something pretty substantial happened. As it turns out, Lumin was commissioning a fursuit for himself. On December 12th, 2023, a fursuit maker by the name Shell Sews would post their work onto Instagram, that being a fursuit by the name of Lumin City. Now, given the reputation of Lumin I've laid out for you already, I'm sure you already have a question. Why would this fursuit maker agree to make a fursuit for Lumin despite his reputation? Well, this actually has a pretty simple explanation to it. You see, they didn't know about Lumin's reputation when taking him as a client. You see, Shell started working on Lumin's fursuit early in 2023, when testimonies against Lumin's actions were pretty scarce to come across. It wasn't until Tripp's Beware post that word began to spread, which resulted in Shell removing Lumin from their Telegram group the day after the Beware post. There was just one problem: the fursuit Lumin commissioned from her. You probably noticed from the image that I showed that it was finished. So why did Shell decide to finish the fursuit, you might be thinking? Well, unfortunately, she kind of found herself lodged between a rock and a hard place. So Shell started work on Lumin's fursuit in February 2023. So by the time the Beware came out in late October, she was well into finishing the head, and by that point the suit was pretty much already done. Shell was in a position where they couldn't exactly refund Lumin without chalking up months of work, supplies, and materials as wasted. The best Shell was able to do was finish the suit for Lumin and cut ties after he received it. So this is what she would do, to the obvious dismay of Lumin. Sometime following his removal from Shell's Telegram group, Lumin would make a community post concerning the situation. He opened it by saying Shell was receiving harassment for accepting his commission due to Tripp's accusation of stalking. While he disavows any harassment being sent Shell's way for this, I can't see I came across any beratement being sent their way, at least not publicly. I can understand how he would perceive it this way as Shell removed him from her chat without warning, but posts I found talking about this made the differentiation that the problem was with Lumin the suitor, not Shell the maker. The closest thing I could come across was Tripp jumping to a conclusion before getting corrected immediately after. Following this, however, Lumin would then take the time to express his disappointment with Shell, saying that she didn't come to him to ask questions about the accusations before removing him from the fursuit group. He then mentions the response that we went over previously, saying how it proved his behavior wasn't stalking because Blue Wolf didn't believe he was stalking them, despite the Telegram messages he used for proof showing Blue say how she and Tripp were freaked out about how Lumin found them. But regardless, Lumin would also take this time to attempt discrediting Tripp, while also adding in an odd detail. Along with saying how Tripp didn't report him to Furpocalypse Security in 2022 and leaked venting messages from a private Discord server, he mentions how when he was volunteering at Furpoc 2023, Tripp refused to let Lumin check his badge. At this point, I assume that Tripp found out that Lumin would be volunteering at Furpoc 2023, and that this was his motive for making the call-out post when he did. That didn't seem to be the case, as Lumin being allowed to check badges and IDs for the con caught Tripp by surprise, and given their alleged past history, I don't think you have to wonder why Tripp didn't want Lumin to be the one checking his ID. But Lumin would then end the post by stating how these accusations against him only go on to divide the fandom, and says that he's grown from his mistakes and would be a better person. It's just a shame that this action wouldn't align with his words going forward, as soon after, Lumin City uploaded a video talking about his new fursuit and the process he went through to get it. And given the previous videos we talked about, I'm sure you can assume how this one went.
I've worn this fursuit multiple times for the past 2 weeks. It's the best fursuit I've ever gotten, but you shouldn't commission them.
Titled Unboxing the Best Worst Fursuit and Suiting Up, this video is essentially a repeat of the response we just went over, talking about how instead of coming to him and listening to his side concerning the allegations, Shell essentially washed her hands of him after sending him the fursuit, refusing to fix any damages Lumin makes to the suit after getting it. However, this isn't expanded on until halfway through the video, as the first half is just him talking about how he came to make his persona and the process he went through to find a fursuit maker.
Unfortunately, after posting the completed fursuit to social media, they were harassed for accepting commission. However, the accusations were made public on October 21st when they finished the head. It would have been too late to cancel commission at that point. I was incredibly disappointed this was happening. However, I was also disappointed that Shell didn't ask me questions about the accusations before removing me from the fursuit group. I apologize for my inappropriate actions while denying the more serious accusations.
Lumin talking about the controversy here sounds a lot more malicious than in previous postings, saying that he apologized for his inappropriate actions while denying the more serious accusations, not elaborating as to what either category consisted of. He then later talks about his email exchange with Shell, labeling Tripp's Beware post as a smear campaign in the process.
I had an email exchange with Shell after they shared support for the smear campaign. When pressed on the ban from the fursuit cut, they refused to acknowledge my side with evidence, unprofessionally dismissing my concerns. They refused to uphold their 6-month repair warranty and shunned me in response. I feel they lied to my face for 2 months after the ban to use my platform to get a good review out of me.
Now I know making fun of a person's following size is pretty frowned upon in the fandom, but I don't think Shell was trying to clout chase through the endorsement of a YouTuber with just under 1,500 subs. And even if she was, wouldn't she have reached out to you? Wouldn't this be a case of a fursuit maker reaching out to someone with a platform looking to have a fursuit made, rather than the other way around?
They say that they cannot let their business suffer because of the actions of someone else. They should have released a statement denying they knew about my accused negative behavior before accepting my commission. It's ironic this is their response, as it would cause significantly more negative brand damage.
It's just such an egotistical way to spin things. He then remarks that he distanced himself from Shell and can no longer recommend their work due to their handling of the accusations, as if she didn't cut ties with him first.
I've since distanced myself from Shell. I'm unfortunately unable to recommend them for future fursuit commissions. I'm very disappointed in their handling of these false accusations.
And then we just go into the unboxing of the fursuit, despite his remarks he just made about the maker. Personally, I will say Shell has some pretty nice looking fursuits. Granted, I'm not much into the fursuiting scene myself, but if you're looking for a maker, she's definitely one to consider. You know, as long as you don't have a Beware post out against you. Oh, and speaking of that Beware post, Anthro New England 2024 would take place between the 18th and the 21st of January. Tripp would attend this convention just as he would any other. However, they would find themselves in yet another situation, a situation in which Tripp made a video giving his side on. If the title didn't give it away, Lumin was also at this convention, and according to this video, they would find Tripp on the 20th of January, hand them a letter, and flee the scene moments later.
So I was chilling where the fursuiters were chilling, and I was just chatting with another suitor who I was just like, hey, we're just vibing, just chatting around, just being like, hey, how's the walk for you? The walk was fucking insane. Like, it's cold as shit. But anyway, Lumin City just was apparently standing behind me for a solid good like 20-30 seconds. And at some point, I did this hand motion where he went like this. And next thing you know, he shoved this fucking letter in my hand. And then basically just after he handed it to me, just booked it. Gone. He's sprinted the hell out of there in the most suspicious ass way possible.
Unsure as to what could have been in that letter, Tripp would then take it to Khan Security and explain what had just happened to him. The staff would then carefully cut open the envelope to reveal a notice to cease and desist from Lumin City to Tripp. Ignore the fact that it isn't notarized in any way. It should be pretty clear just by the fact he signed it with his furry name that this isn't an actual legal document. There's nothing actionable that can be done based on this template document that Lumin printed out the day before tracking Tripp down to hand it to him. I use that specific wording because, well, I do find myself agreeing with Tripp here. This is stalking, plain and simple.
I am making this video because this has gone too far. To the point where he claims that he's not stalking and harassing me. But this is literally stalking and harassing me by tracking me down and handing this to me and running away. This is literally intimidation. This is an intimidation tactic to basically get me to shut up about him, but I'm not. Lumin City, you're actually a psychopath. You're actually a fucking psychopath, and the fact that you decide to type this out in probably chat ABT or whatever, I don't know whatever AI site you use, but whatever you use to type this up, this has no legal merit. This means nothing. By the time you see this video, this letter has been given to the police, and are most likely investigating this whole thing. At this point, I will be pressing charges against Lumin City. I will actually be giving him a real legitimate legal document stating, stay the fuck away from me, aka a restraining order. At this point, Lumin City, stay the fuck away from this fandom. You're actually legit fucked in the head, and you need help. If this isn't enough proof that you're fucked in the head, I don't know what is.
Since this stunt Lumin pulled, there haven't been any other interactions between the two, as Lumin appears to have gone radio silent on YouTube since. So, as you can probably gather from what we've gone over, Lumin City is someone who, while possessing a relatively small online presence, has made a pretty infamous name for himself in the furry fandom. And although he seems to blame Tripp as the sole reason he's getting criticized and removed from local furry chat rooms, I think he's failing to realize that Tripp's testimony isn't the only one here. Just looking at Tripp's post, there are quite a few replies, a majority of them being other people's less than favorable experiences with Lumin. If this is something that has come up more than once and keeps continuing to happen, maybe it isn't ableism anymore. Maybe you're not getting excluded from groups because you're neurodivergent. Maybe you just need to do some genuine self-reflection and figure out what behaviors are feeding into the reputation you've gotten. Maybe it's time to stop the stalking and taking photos of people without their consent, and time to start respecting the boundaries of those around you. And while that's a lot easier said than done, I'm sure it can't exactly hurt to try. But with that being said, that's all there is from me. I've been Benji, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.
Funding for this program was made possible by